I turned into my own gravel drive on a Friday morning to meet a locksmith, and counted 9 vehicles and a fifth-wheel camper plugged into my outside outlet. Smoke rolled off my grill. A stranger walked out my front door with a towel around his neck, and stretched between my 2 front porch posts was a professionally printed vinyl banner that read, "Cove Here Family Lake Days." My son-in-law's father stood at my grill with tongs in his hand and told me to relax, because my daughter was going to own this place someday anyway. That banner is the thing that told me everything. That wasn't a bedsheet with marker on it. That was grommets and hemmed edges. Somebody designed it on a computer, ordered it, and waited over a week for it to arrive in the mail. That's the moment I stopped being angry and started getting organized. My name is Cyrus Ledbetter. Everybody's called me Cy since 1962. I'm 69, lived in Garland County, Arkansas my whole life except 2 years in the Army I don't discuss. For 38 years I was a land surveyor, mostly boundary work. And boundary work teaches you one thing above all else. A boundary is not a fence. A fence is what people put up. A boundary is what's recorded. A call in a deed, a pin in the dirt. And those two things drift apart, year after year. Not because anybody's a thief, but because a man mows 6 feet past his line because it looks bad not to. Then he puts a woodpile there, then a shed. His kids grow up believing the shed is the corner because it's the only corner they've ever seen. Enough time, enough silence, and the law will side with him. It's called adverse possession. Possession plus time plus your silence. Nobody loses ground because somebody mowed. They lose it because for 11 summers running, they thought about saying something and decided it wasn't worth the friction. I'm going to come back to that, and it's going to cost me. My wife was Wilhelmina, Billy, to everyone. 41 years married. She died 5 years ago, 6 days after what was supposed to be a routine heart valve surgery. She's the one who found the cabin, out on Quarry Point Road on Lake Ouida, back in 2003. She called me from the driveway before she'd even gone inside. Porch faces west, she said. All summer it's a griddle until 7, and then for 40 minutes, it's the finest place in Arkansas. She kept her mother's white ironstone pitcher on the porch table, and every week from May to September, there were wildflowers in it. I never once saw it empty. After she died, I couldn't sit on that porch. I'd get 4 minutes before I heard her in the kitchen, and I'd have to leave. So instead of grieving properly, I maintained the place, paid a man to mow, had a neighbor check the pipes, drove out monthly to run the faucets and sweep the steps. 5 years of that. Then in March, my daughter Lainey called and told me I was going to be a granddaddy. Something turned over in me that day. I started picturing a grandbaby on that dock in a life vest 3 sizes too big. I decided to open the cabin back up, not sell it, not sign it over, just make it right again. I called a locksmith, a security company, a cleaning crew, a painter I'd trusted since 1998. I was doing it properly. My son-in-law is Boone Coffier, 36, decent enough, works parts at a boat dealership. His father is another matter. Dwayne Coffier is 66, the kind of man who calls every favor family and every boundary disrespect. His wife Charlene smiles the whole time he does it. That Friday morning I felt good. Coffee in the holder, a folder of contractor quotes on the seat, cinnamon rolls for Lainey on the way home. Then I turned up my own drive and stopped the truck. 9 vehicles. A fifth-wheel camper parked on my grass with the jacks down. Billy's 4 blue porch chairs dragged into the yard. Coolers on my steps. Towels over my rail. That banner. Here's the most useful thing I can give you. I did not get out of the truck. At 69, pride is not a security plan. I called the Garland County Sheriff's Office, gave my name, my address, told them exactly what I was looking at, and said I'd wait at the bottom of the drive. Because if I walked up on 9 vehicles of people who already believed this place was theirs, it becomes a family argument. And family arguments don't get settled, they get absorbed. I didn't want an argument, I wanted a record. The deputy, Anitra Boaz, arrived in 11 minutes. I handed her my license and my deed. We walked up together. Dwayne saw the uniform and his smile went tight, but he still hollered, "Cy! There he is!" like I'd shown up to his party. I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at a stranger wearing one of Billy's beach towels, teenagers throwing a football through her flower bed, Charlene barefoot on my porch, drinking from Billy's grandmother's jelly glass, and down in the grass by the horseshoe pit, Billy's white ironstone pitcher with cigarette butts in it. Everything up to that point was trespass. A phone call and a deputy could fix that. That pitcher was the thing no document in Arkansas could fix. 20 summers of ditch flowers, never once let empty. I stood in my own yard and for about 4 seconds didn't trust myself. Deputy Boaz asked who was in charge. Dwayne laughed and said he reckoned that'd be him. Just a family weekend, ma'am. She asked if it was his property. I said no, it was not. Charlene begged me not to make it ugly. Boone said it'd be fine. I said Boone doesn't own this cabin. And Dwayne set down his tongs and said the sentence. Come on now, Cy. Your girl's married to my boy. They've got a baby coming. All this ends up theirs anyway. We ain't strangers. A few people laughed. That particular laugh people make when they've decided the man being disrespected is too old or too polite to do anything about it. I've heard it in 40 boundary disputes. It always comes from the side that's been mowing. Deputy Boaz confirmed with me, plainly, that none of them had permission, a key, or a code. Dwayne's face tightened, not jovial anymore, embarrassed that I'd brought a witness with a badge. I put one boot on the step and said, without raising my voice, "There's one name on the deed. Everybody who doesn't live here is leaving. Anything of mine that leaves with you gets reported stolen. Anything broken gets billed. Anybody who comes back without written permission gets charged." Deputy Boaz took it from there, ran IDs, logged plates, formally trespassed Dwayne and Charlene off the property. Walking the house, I found luggage in my bedroom. Dwayne and Charlene had been sleeping in my bed. Someone had been through the pantry, the linen closet, a grocery receipt from 4 days earlier. And on the dresser in the back bedroom, a printed sheet, not handwritten, printed, laying out the whole weekend, arrival to checkout, with a list of my bedrooms assigned by name. Master, Dwayne and Charlene, my wife's name written next to the room where her clothes hung until the spring after she died. I handed the sheet to Deputy Boaz. She asked Dwayne if this was an organized rental. He snapped, for the first time all morning. "It's a family gathering." I asked why it said checkout. Nobody answered. They were gone by 12:30. The locksmith had every exterior lock changed by 2:15. Cameras were up by 6. I washed that pitcher in my own sink 3 times, wrapped it in a shop rag, and drove home with it riding shotgun like a witness. I called Laney from the road. She was cheerful until I asked if she or Boone had given Dwayne the gate code. Her confusion was real. That mattered enormously. Then Boone admitted it. After an ice storm in January, Dwayne offered to check the dock cable, and Boone gave him the code and forgot he still had it. My daughter made a sound like all the air left her at once, and apologized to me for something she had no hand in. That hurt worse than anything Dwayne said in my yard. I told Boone plainly. His father used his trust to get onto my land. That's on Dwayne. But the code came out of his mouth. That part's his. Monday morning I called Connie Duplantis, 31 years doing estate and property law in this county. I told her everything. She said the single best thing I'd done was stay in the truck and call the sheriff before saying one word. Then she said there was something else I needed to think about. The estate documents. For 2 days I thought the worst was over. Then Wednesday, checking the mailbox out of habit, I found a glossy postcard from a vacation rental platform addressed to Dwayne Coffier at my address, an insurance quote for short-term rental liability on a lakefront property, and a county envelope addressed to Quarry Point Retreat LLC. Standing there with the wind off the water, something in me went cold and almost restful. Dwayne hadn't borrowed my cabin. He was standing up a business on it. Connie's investigator found the listing within a week, already pulled down, which told us everything about what Dwayne knew. Private family lake cabin, 3 bedrooms, private dock, sleeps 10, $289 a night, my porch, my dock, Billy's kitchen, her pitcher full of flowers in the photo. And the photos weren't stolen off the internet. Boone had taken them 2 summers back and texted them to his mother at Christmas. Charlene passed them to Dwayne. Dwayne posted them for money. I thought about selling for about half a day. By that evening I knew better. Billy loved that place, and my granddaughter deserved to see that sunset from that rocker. Dwayne Coffier was not going to run me off my own ground. He was going to learn how I held it. Connie and I spent 3 weeks building it properly. First, the Quarry Point Trust. The cabin moved in cleanly. Me as trustee, Laney with lifetime use but no title exposed to a divorce, a bankruptcy, or an in-law's idea. No overnight guests outside immediate family, without written trustee permission. No commercial rental, no transfer of access codes, by anybody, ever. Second, an account for the baby, education, medical, first home help, direct benefit to my grandchild only. Third, an acknowledgement for Boone, reviewed by his own independent attorney, stating plainly that the cabin and trust belonged to my line. Fourth, the demand letter, trespass, damages, cleaning, locksmith, security, the cracked porch board, unauthorized commercial use of the property and the photographs, and formal notice that any future entry meant criminal charges. I set the meeting for the second Saturday in June, in Connie's conference room. Neutral ground, recorder on the table, light on. I wore the navy sport coat Billy bought me for our 40th anniversary. I carried a folder, not anger. Anger had already done its work. Dwayne and Charlene arrived 9 minutes late. He didn't sit until Connie told him plainly he could sit or leave, and if he left, it would all come by process server. Connie laid it out in order: the sheriff's report, the printed schedule, the rental listing, the insurance quote, the LLC filing, the screenshots. Boone read his own mother's name next to my bedroom and said one word: Dad. Dwayne called it a joke somebody typed up. Then Connie laid down the photos, and Boone said, in a voice with nothing left in it, "Those are my pictures." Charlene said fast that she didn't know what he was doing with them, and her own son turned and looked at her, because he already knew about his father. He hadn't known about her. Dwayne pointed at me across the table and said we were making it ridiculous, that the place was going to be Laney's anyway, that they ought to be welcome. I leaned in, just enough that he had to look at me, and said his family was welcome at my table when they were asked. They were never welcome to turn my wife's cabin into a business. He said I was twisting it. I said I wasn't twisting it. I was recording it. Connie explained the trust in plain English, and I watched Laney's face move through fear, then confusion, then something that looked like relief, because finally somebody had built a wall where everyone had been pretending a curtain would do. Then Connie noted that Boone had signed the acknowledgement 4 days earlier. Dwayne rounded on his son. "You signed what?" Boone's voice shook, but he didn't look away. "I signed the truth." Dwayne asked if he was picking them. Boone said, "I'm picking my wife, and I'm picking not to steal from her father." Charlene started crying, and I genuinely couldn't tell you if they were real. Right at the very end, when it was clear to everyone in that room, Dwayne stopped performing. He said, "I built that dock in 2004 for the Hickses before y'all bought it. I drove the pilings, set the ledger board, got paid $1,100. Then, quieter. And in 20 years, Cy, nobody's ever asked me to sit down on that porch. I didn't have anything to say to that, because it's true. I checked afterward, verified, every word. Dwayne Coffier spent 40 years building docks and setting boat lifts for people who own the shoreline, and never once invited him to sit on it. Then his boy married into a family that had one, and in his head, that wasn't theft. That was finally arriving. I understand him completely. It doesn't move me 1 inch. He put cigarette butts in Billy's mother's pitcher and assigned my dead wife's bedroom to his own wife on a printed sheet. He's not a monster. He's a man who spent his life being the help at the lake and decided that being family finally meant he was allowed inside. That's a far more common thing than a monster, and it's exactly why this happens to somebody every single summer. He paid the invoice 9 days later. Cashier's check, no note. My granddaughter came in August, Wilhelmina Coffier. They call her Willa. The first time we brought her out to Quarry Point, the sycamores were turning. Laney sat in her mother's rocker with the baby asleep on her chest. Boone fixed a loose dockboard without being asked, and I noticed, and didn't mention it, which is how men say thank you. Dwayne and Charlene weren't there. They asked. Laney told them no. Not forever, not cruel, just no. That one word, said on time, saves a family more than any speech ever has. Here's what this whole thing taught me, and it isn't the lesson people expect. Everybody wants it to be set boundaries. Fine, it's true. It's on a magnet somewhere, and it's never once helped anybody, because nobody knows what it means in practice. Here's what it means. Nobody steals ground all at once. A man mows 6 feet further every summer, then a shed goes up, then his kids grow up believing the shed is the corner. And if you let it go long enough without objecting, in most states the law will eventually side with him. I have to be honest about my own part in this. Dwayne didn't start in April. He started 4 years ago at a wedding, when he told a room he'd married into lake property, and I laughed it off because it was a wedding, and I didn't want to be that father of the bride. He mowed further every cookout after that, every time I let a comment slide. 4 years of him moving the line 6 feet at a time, and every time I decided it wasn't worth the friction. By April, he genuinely believed the shed was the corner. In his own head, he wasn't lying. So here's the one thing I'd ask you to actually do. It takes 11 seconds, and it's the cheapest legal act there is. The first time somebody in your life uses something of yours without asking, the truck, the tools, the guest room, send one short, friendly, written message. Not a call, a text. Saw you had it out this weekend. No problem this time. Just check with me first from here on. A phone call is a memory. A text is a record. That one sentence resets the clock, costs you nothing, and ends 90% of these before they start. And in the 10% it doesn't, you've already written the first page of your file without knowing it. The picture stays at my house now. It goes to the cabin every May, full of flowers, and comes home in September. That's how it's going to be.